I hope you learned something from this. I know when I just presented this to my group I just told you about, they were like so excited because they saw some ways they could help themselves from a weight loss equation.
Hi, welcome to the Judy Terrell Show, where I explore topics intended to optimize every body 50, 60, 70, and above.
Hi everybody, and welcome to Your Second 50. Weight management is probably the number one topic in health and wellness and fitness. And in my work with clients on a day-to-day basis, I find that there's a lot of attention being put towards what you're eating or how you're not eating and what you should eat and what you shouldn't eat and how much you should have it and the timing and all that is very, very important. But there's like the other side of it, and that's the calorie burn side. And in my work with clients, I'm finding there's a lot of misconception here. And I want to clear that up in this video so I can help you to actually see results on the scale of fat loss, if that is what you're after, weight management, right? And health and vitality, which is going to come from proper weight management. All right, welcome everybody. I am Judy Terrell. I am a nationally board certified health coach. I have credentials up the wazoo on, I'm a certified nutritionist. I'm a personal trainer. I'm a master's degree in counseling psychology. I've got a lot of credentialing, but what I have as most valuable for you in this video is that I have worked in this industry as a clinician, one-on-one with clients, and I continue to do it even at 62 for 43 some odd years. I have 40 plus client hours per week, and I'm in the trenches with everybody. So I hear things from across ages, from across genders, from across socioeconomic, levels, from across career industries, and there's themes that are coming out that are, people are struggling with in order to see that fat loss that they're looking for aesthetic reasons and also for their health. All right, and I want to clarify and talk to you in this video about the burn side. So energy in, energy out, right? If you have too much energy coming in, it's going to get stored. If you have the same amount of energy coming in as going out, it's going to, you're going to be at equal. And if you have too little, you're going to, take from the body fat, right? But when it comes to the energy out, there's actually 4 components to that. And most people think the exercise one is the most important, and you would be wrong if that is you. All right, so let's talk about what are the 4 components of energy burn that a human body does on a day-to-day basis, and where your biggest, most effective hits might be to help that side of it, while paying attention to the food piece too, but maybe it's the outside that's confounding and not helping you not get results from the in part of the equation, all right? So, by far, the number one, the first part of the energy out equation of the 4 components, the one that is the most, up to 75%, 50 to 75% for the average person, is what is known as your RMR, your resting metabolic rate, okay? The way I describe it for people is this: the amount of calories that you would need if you were in a coma, but your survival mechanisms were going on, right? So your brain is working, your heart is beating, and you're breathing. It takes there's cellular, replication going on. Like the maintenance of this vehicle is your resting metabolic rate. The amount of calories it takes for that is the resting metabolic rate, okay? Now, I measure resting metabolic rates for clients. I have a machine in my studio, so for decades now, and the resting metabolic rate for the average 50-year-old is females and males. Males are a little bit higher, generally speaking, not always. It's going to be somewhere in the 1,000 to 1,800 calorie realm, okay? Now again, that is what you need if you were in a coma, okay? If you're watching this, you're not in a coma, and so there's more to your burn rate. But what I want to say about the resting metabolic rate is that, despite what we think, that your resting metabolism goes down as you get older, that has actually been debunked by recent science, okay? Once you're past puberty, your resting metabolic rate as a human is pretty static. It's pretty stable. It doesn't go down. Now, you can make it go down, and I'll tell you how in just a minute, but for most people, by far, it is a stable until you hit your 60s, and then there's a bit of a down, but it's not as much as you think. I have many women who are coming to me that are in menopause or even perimenopause, and they're like, my metabolism is taking a hit. Their resting metabolism hasn't taken a hit because I measure it and I show it to them. Other things have that I'm going to get to in a second, but this is good news because, the resting metabolism, we rely on that, and that's a good chunk of calories. So you don't have to be on these starvation diets, and as a matter of fact, if you go below your resting metabolic rate in trying to lose weight, then you are going to create a corruption to that metabolic rate. You are going to lower it, and that is not a good thing for your long-term weight management. The information that just came out from the Biggest Loser, series that was on, many of those people corrupted their resting metabolisms and now are battling that aftermath even after they've gained the weight back. I don't want that to happen to anybody. So you do not want, hear me, this is a very, very big piece right now, like critical to this video. You do not want to go below your resting metabolic rate if you are trying to lose weight, because you will corrupt it, and that is a bad thing in the long run, even if it might be looking good in the short run. And I got to throw the GLP-1 drugs and the bariatric surgeries under the bus here, because both those, if done improperly, will have somebody eat such a small amount of calories because they just can't eat it or they're not hungry for it. And in the long run, that is not going to be to their benefit, okay? And the long run might not be, 20 years down the road, but 2 years or 5 years down the road. But that's a different video. My point here is that resting metabolic rate makes up anywhere from 50 to 75% of your daily calorie burn, and it is a pretty static thing. You can corrupt it by either going too low in calories or having too little muscle, being sarcopenia, which is too little muscle for a body. You don't want that either, because that will lower your resting metabolism. But for most of us, we're in that window, and that number, if you don't have access to someone like me who can measure it, you can get a smart scale, and based off your composition numbers, it's going to give you an estimated RMR, and you can use that for accuracy, okay? That's your low end. Now, you don't want to go below that, but I target people who are not avid, high-end exercisers, hours a day, training for events. That's the number that I have them target for intake, so that there's a deficit. Because there's 3 other components to your daily burn, and this is where most of my clients do not understand and where they get messed up. And I'm assuming you might be too, so here we go. The second part of the burning side of the equation is what's called the thermic effect of food, TEF. All right, and basically 10% of the total amount of calories that you take in goes towards the digestion of those calories, right? Or the digestion of that food. So if you're taking in 1,200 calories, you get 120 calories for the digestion of food. If you're taking in 2,000 calories, you get 2,000 calories in addition to your resting metabolic rate for the digestion of that food. And you want to make that as robust as possible, not by necessarily eating more, but here's how people are messing that up. If you are eating ultra-processed foods, or foods that you don't have to chew that very much, like protein powders, for instance, if you are not having to chew them, then they pretty much go through your system. There's not a lot of work that your digestive system has to do to break that down. They're already broken down. It goes immediately into the bloodstream, and it costs you less calories. When you have tried all the programs and done all the right things, and yet you still can't lose the weight that you're trying to lose, and you're a male or female over 50, now is the time for you to look into my program, Your Second 50.life. It includes online video support. You can download video and PDFs for eating plan and exercise plan appropriate for over 50. It includes group support on a monthly basis, and perhaps even more importantly, it includes weekly individualized coaching specific to you. Having the generalized plan is a good thing. I have helped literally thousands of people to lose weight over the 43 years I've been in practice, and I'd like to help you too. So if you're eating 100 calories or 20 grams of protein powder, you're going to absorb 99.9 of those calories. If you're eating 100 calories or 20 grams of protein from chicken, for instance, because you have to chew it, because your digestive system has to, churn it and break it down, it's going to cost you more calories. So of those 100 calories, the rule of thumb is 20%. You're only going to absorb 80 calories from that 100 because 20 of it went towards the digestion of it. Whereas for the ultra-processed foods, protein powders being one of them, you're absorbing all that, okay? You don't get that calorie burn. So the thermic effect of food is something that you can consciously be paying attention to by eating foods that you have to chew. The more you have to chew it, the more calories, generally speaking, it's going to take to digest it. And protein requires more calories to digest than carbs and fat. So eating like not over protein per se, but making sure you're getting your protein in is also going to help you. Eating whole food, fresh vegetables, fruits, and plants, that also requires more chewing, and that's going to boost up the thermic effect of digesting food and that part of your daily calorie burn. All right, that's the second component. And that's about 10% of your calories, okay, or 10% of your burn rate for the day, okay? So the resting metabolism very high, the thermic effect of digesting your food is a little lower. All right, here's the third component, and this is the one that most people focus on. This is formal exercise. This is go to the gym, take a Zumba class, go bike riding, golf, pickleball, strength training, cardio machines, we all know, Pilates, yoga, all of it, swimming, I can go on and on and on. This is the formal exercise. And for most people who are trying to lose weight, if they're not losing weight, they're like, I need to up my exercise. I'm not saying that's not necessarily a good thing to do. I'm never going to say to somebody, lower your exercise or don't do your exercise. I have been a fitness person since I turned 18. I own gyms. I have a studio now. I design exercise programs for people. I am a 13-time Ironman myself, still competing. I'm all about exercise. I think it's a phenomenal stress management tool. However, when you are trying to up your formal exercise as a method to lose weight because you're trying to increase your calorie burn and keep your calorie intake where you're trying to keep it for weight loss, what happens is that the intensity of those activities require more calories for the time you're doing it, and then the aftermath is you get hungrier. And so I have so many clients that come to me and they're trying to up their exercise and they're doing, metabolic workouts and high intensity HIIT training and Peloton classes and all this. And it feels like you're burning 1,500 calories for the hour. You're probably burning closer to 500 or 600, but your appetite later in the day is gonna be higher than your calorie burn rate that you actually did in the class. And then in your mind, you rationalize, well, I must have burned thousands of calories because I'm so hungry. I must have some wiggle room. And what actually ends up happening is you end up eating more than you actually burned. This is so common. I can't even, it hurts my heart. And I'm trying to educate my clients I'm working with to be careful about that. Your formal exercise can be upwards of 2 times your resting metabolic rate if you're doing Ironman training like I am. But for most people, it's not that high. It's about, it might be 20 to 25% of their daily calorie burn, and they're not doing it every day. They're doing it 3 or 4 days a week, all right? And then that ignites more hunger. And then they eat more, and then they get frustrated because the scale isn't going down. So the formal exercise, exercise activity thermogenetics, EAT is the acronym for that, is definitely someplace you want to put some focus, but more important than that, and even more effective and a better tool, is the fourth component of your daily calorie burn. And this is something called NEAT. That's the acronym. NEAT. And it stands for Non-Exercise Activity Thermogenetics. What is that, right? Basically, it's all the movement that you do in your everyday life that isn't formal exercise. And here's an interesting thing. So I have science to back this. They have done studies where people go to the gym and they do their workout every day, And then they have people who don't work out in the gym, but they just move around in their everyday life. And because in their mind they didn't do any formal activity, and the people who went to exercise feel like, oh, I worked out today, what ends up happening is the people who went to the gym end up moving less in their everyday life. They sit more. They rationalize, well, I worked out so hard, I'm gonna, now I'm gonna, sit in my recliner chair, or I'm gonna go to the beach and lay down. I did my morning run. Versus somebody who didn't do a formal exercise, they actually end up, doing more movement through the day in the science that I'm quoting right here. And so I remember years ago, I went to a fitness seminar, leading researcher out of the University of New Mexico, Dr. Lenny Kravitz, amazing, amazing researcher. And this was like 35 years ago. He said, as a fitness professional, the best thing you can do is for people your clients who are trying to lose weight, is help them to move more in their everyday life. Now, when I went to that seminar, this was way before step trackers and wearables were available, okay? This is like the 1990s, okay? Now, we have the step trackers, and you can get a pedometer, okay? I don't care. Anything that's gonna track steps and target 7,000 steps. I've got many clients that if it wasn't for their go to the gym, the rest of their day, they're getting like 2,000 steps. If you can up that to 7,000, for every 2,000 steps, you're going to be burning about 100 more calories a day. I just had one of my group coaching episodes for my community, yoursecond50.life, and people were flabbergasted by this. They were like, light bulbs went off. They were like, oh my God, I can't believe that's that many calories, right? But 2,000 steps is approximately a mile. Now, not going out to walk for a mile, but moving around in your house, like getting up, like just me, I'm a mover. Like, even standing here in this video, I'm constantly shifting my body weight versus somebody who just stands. My boyfriend can stand and sit and barely move like a zombie for hours, okay? I am kinetic, right? And even just moving your arms, being expressive with yourself, fidgeting, is a way that you're burning more calories than somebody who sits very quietly, right? Standing up, getting up, walking around, on commercials, on TV, and then sitting back down, you will be amazed at just how easy it is to pick up another 2,000 to 4,000 to 6,000 steps a day without going to the gym, without getting on your treadmill, without doing more formal exercise, all right? So your NEAT can be anywhere, like again, upwards of 20 to 40% of your calorie burn, right, per day. So this is where I'm encouraging my clients, even before their formal exercise, to, strike. Because if you can pick up 300 to 500 calories more per day by just moving around in your everyday life, measured by steps, there's your calorie deficit for the day, even if you don't go to the gym. Now, if you have a formal exercise plan and you're increasing your NEAT, which is where a lot of people are not doing, they're doing their formal exercise and then, like I said, sitting on their butts more than they think, all right? Then, you're probably not going to see the weight loss you're after. So I'm encouraging you to take a look at that NEAT and see how you can creatively, up that. Rather than be efficient, like when I'm in my studio, if I have something from my office, things that I need to go and bring up to the front of the room, rather than take 3 things at once, I purposely make myself do one at a time and do it a couple times as opposed to one time, because that's one of the ways that I can creatively get in more steps in the middle of my day, right? So, in summary, the exercise outside the equation is where I feel I am observing in my clients that there's room to be had to make improvement to help the weight loss equation separate from the food. And if you're somebody who thinks you're doing your food right, you're not seeing the weight loss, and you want to take heed to what I'm saying here. The first part is your resting metabolism. By far the biggest in most people. It is pretty static, and you want that, and that's the lowest amount of calories that you want to target to get the maximum amount of weight loss, because the other 3 components would then create the deficit, all right? But resting metabolic rate is not what's screwing you up. Resting metabolic rate, number 1, thermic effect of food, chew food, take food that's in its whole food form so you get more of the firing of the furnace and the more calorie burn from actually digesting whole food. Number 3, NEAT. neat, move around more, get more steps in your day without formal, separate from formal exercise. That right there, my friends, is your biggest strike. That right there is where I'm helping people to see the scale start to move when it wasn't before, without even changing their food. And then the fourth component is your formal exercise. And absolutely, do that. Build your muscle, preserve your muscle, do your cardio for the mitochondrial health, and the furnaces and the burning of the energy and the health and vitality that does. Do your, Pilates and your flexibility type workouts to keep your body, free in the biggest ranges of motion that it can have, so it doesn't feel like a prison as you're getting older and stiffer and tighter. All these are great things, but that is only one component, and in many people, it's a smaller component when you add up the other three. All right, so there's your 4 components of burn. I hope you learned something from this. I know when I just presented this to my group I just told you about, they were like so excited because they saw some ways they could help themselves from a weight loss equation. Okay, I hope you do too. And if you found this valuable, I encourage you to join my community, yoursecond50.life. It is a community of 50 plus older people, men and women both, where we're all interested in increasing health and vitality as we age, and that includes, weight management as a part of that, but it's almost like a subcategory of health and vitality, not vice versa. All right, so check it out, everybody. I'm so excited. I'm getting tongue-tied. I hope to see you on the platform, and if not, then another video of mine soon. Okay, in the meantime, be well.
And if you'd like to have access to some of my additional resources, I can be found at Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and on my website, www.judyterrell.com.